Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional and an author from Sydney, Australia, Mr. Joe Hart. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you. Joe is a leadership coach, an author, a psychologist, and a dad. And as I mentioned, he's an author, and all of you know I'm very partial to authors. He's an author of a book titled True Perspective, and we will talk about his book. So, Joe, before we start talking about your book, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Yeah, well, I'll try and be as brief as I can. But look, I was born in a little town called Byron Bay, which you may have heard of.
Yeah.
And from there, I grew up in the surrounding suburbs and areas, but Lismore being one of those places. Once I finished school, after moving around quite a lot as a young person, I went to university at UNSW. Interestingly, I didn't always want to be a psychologist. I wanted to be a landscape artist, actually. Wow. I wanted to be quite practical with my hands. I enjoyed being outdoors and working in gardens, but then it came to the point where as I got into university, I started to really enjoy understanding human behavior, and I did a lot of biology as well. So I did animal behavior, and that seemed to go quite nicely with psychology. So then did my honors, did my masters, and started working as a psychologist with an organization called Gallup, which you might know for the Gallup polls. And that was pretty much the start of my career and coaching journey, and sort of led me to where I am today.
Fabulous. So let's talk about your book, True Perspective. Tell me a little bit about the book, and what was your hypothesis when you wrote it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Both, actually. What's it about? And also, what was my hypothesis? So what it's about, it's like an autobiography interwoven with my insights around leadership that I've really gleaned from all of the coaching work that I've done. So part of my belief is that through disclosing who I am and being really open and honest about who I am, I actually enable others to do the same. Okay. So it's that reciprocal sense of openness and vulnerability that people then wish to return the favor. And so I deliberately do that in the book to let's say disarm the reader, to enable them to really connect to who I am as an author, but as a person, but also not put myself on in an ivory tower or be high and mighty as a psychologist. I actually want to say I'm human too, and I've lived as well. So please take my insights as real and lived.
Wonderful. And let's talk about some of your insights. So what are the 5 things we need to be highly effective leaders?
Yeah, look, I mean, I reckon there's more than 5, but in terms of what I talk about, I mean, the first is being able to really listen, and I talk about listening with depth. And I know it's not new. Everyone would say, yes, of course, I'm a great listener, or you need to be able to listen. Yeah. But I talk about reflective practice and giving people that opportunity to be heard through hearing themselves effectively. So that's what I call listening with depth. And look, it seems simple, and it's not. Well, it is, but it's difficult to execute. Correct. And I think the more leaders can just come back to that simple point of just listen and listen really powerfully, I think they'll be better as a result. In terms of the other things that I talk about, so learning and being curious. So I shape it by saying learn with endless vigor. So see that constant curiosity as a leader, I think, is so critical. One, it's important to demonstrate that you don't know everything and you're always learning. So in leadership, this is it's attractive because you're actually asking people for their opinion and their perspective, which enables them to want to grow and contribute and be more as a result. So learning with endless vigor. I talk about liberating yourself, and this is the part of the book where I do divulge quite a lot about my personal story.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what do I mean by this? I mean, we get caught up on stuff that's happened to us. Say we've lost a loved one, or we've had something bad to us, or a partner's cheated on us, or whatever it might be. And we sometimes, not always, but sometimes make that mean a whole lot of bad stuff about us in the world, and that we're not worthy of something, or bad things happen to us. And so I like to think that if we liberate ourselves from those beliefs and just those experiences, we'll be much better off as leaders, because we won't be carrying the baggage, so to speak.
And sorry to interrupt you, but on your fourth point, liberate, you say that you shared some personal experiences. Would you be able to share any one experience for our audience?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think one that I talk about this in the book, but one that I'd like to share is the excitement that I had when I was effectively made redundant from an organization that was not sort of working out. I was in my first leadership role. I thought I was doing really well, got a pay rise, all of that stuff. And it was a disaster. I had 18 direct reports, and I wasn't doing well, actually. I didn't feel good. I wasn't authentic in terms of how I was showing up. All of the things that you'd say, yeah, don't do that. I did. And so I'd actually, talked about how we make the exit work for both of us. And that came to fruition. And I received the opportunity to take on one client. And so this was my chance to start my own consulting business, which
amazing.
Yeah,
Great example.
I thought, but fantastic.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets interesting, though.
Okay.
The first day on the job, I had a call scheduled with the HR director to actually execute this program, and the CEO had been let go, and the board of directors said, "Yeah, we're not offering any discretionary spend. We can't do this program." Wow. So here I was thinking that I'd had this awesome platform and all was going to be rosy and the world was smiling at me. And the rug was pulled out from underneath me. And that was a beautiful opportunity, and what I call a moment of truth to really determine, is this what I really want? Because at that point, it was all a bit easy up until then. And so I had to make a decision.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Great example of liberation. Thank you. And your fifth point, you said?
Yeah, so link, it's actually two. So link ideas, concepts, and people. So I think great leaders are those that are able to take disparate information and connect the dots, so to speak. I think this is a really powerful skill because it just enables great things to happen, things that you may not have foreseen or predicted. If you just link people, where maybe it's an energy, maybe it's a concept or something that sort of connects, then do that. And the final one was to love with courage. And I don't mean just people or relationships. I also mean love what you do with courage. So I've had many people say, "Oh, but surely you'd get bored if you just did coaching. Like, you couldn't make it a really amazing living out of that." And I was like, well, actually, if I love what I do and I really connect to the clients that I partner with, I think it will be interesting. And I think it will like that. So you've got to be a bit courageous sometimes. And
Correct. Thank you. What a great response. The next question I have for you, Joe, is, on the pandemic, I've spoken to many leaders, and they say that the most difficult times of their lives has been during the pandemic. They've had to keep their flock together. They've had to keep delivering results, keep stakeholders happy. My question is, how has the pandemic impacted leadership?
Oh, well, I think it's impacted it in so many ways. I think one of the most obvious ways has been not having the physical contact with your team, and the challenges that has presented just in terms of camaraderie, retaining talent, keeping people motivated, staying connected to them and understanding what's challenging for them. And I think a lot of the exhaustion that comes from leaders is the fact that they're trying to stay connected to everyone in an environment that they're not familiar with. And what this means is, they're not actually looking after themselves. Right, it's because they're all sort of facing some of exactly the same challenges of not being connected, not being supported, and whatnot. So, I think burnout has been a significant challenge for so many leaders. And I've just, toward the end of last year, and I even felt it myself, to be honest, a sense of just exhaustion and just being quite tired and, just needing to, but not really knowing what we need, because, travel for some people is a real rejuvenator. They couldn't even do that at times. So, it's been an interesting period. I think frustration is another big one, in that, that certain people, certain leaders have fixed concepts about how to maintain an effective office, how to maintain an effective team. And a lot of that comes back to, are they in the office now full-time, part-time, 2 days a week, 1 day a week? Can we work remotely indefinitely? What does that look like? How will that affect culture? All of these questions, I think, have been milling about, and no one really has a finite answer. And, I think that's...
Well said. My next question is on technology. I remember, and I'm from the boomers generation, but I remember a lot of the work used to be done face-to-face, sitting in boardrooms. Now, technology has started to change leadership dramatically. I'd love to get your perspective on how has the leadership paradigm started to change with new technology, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's still a place for in-person delivery, in-person engagement. I think it does enhance our ability to really connect. And knowing that somebody's going to make the journey to be in front of you and be with you adds a level of commitment to whatever it is that they're doing. So I think that's still something that is there to stay. Having said that, the addition of technology has meant that so many more people can benefit from the insights of leaders, of speakers, of thought leaders around the world that never would have had that opportunity before. It has accelerated, I think, the sharing of knowledge and the opportunities that people have in front of them to be able to learn and grow. I think that is not to be underestimated. I think how technology is going to continue to enhance and affect us is it's probably not even something I can comprehend right now. But yeah, I think it's exciting, and it's definitely a good thing to keep your eye on.
Absolutely. So one more question relating to your book and leadership, and then we'll move to coaching.
Sure.
This is about the young leaders, the millennials and the Gen Z leaders who are now coming into positions of influence in most organizations. And I've often said that the millennials and the Gen Z leaders are bringing in a breath of fresh air with new perspectives, new thinking into most companies. I wanted to get your view on how are they changing the leadership paradigm?
Yeah. Look, you're right in that the Gen Zs, millennials, they're the most educated, the smartest, the most tech savvy group of leaders that we've ever seen. And I think that in and of itself is a really exciting prospect. My experience, because I work with a lot of that demographic, my experience is they're so fantastic to work with from a leadership development standpoint, because they're just so hungry to learn. They're so curious and interested as well. And many of them, they're getting opportunities to learn how to be an effective leader now for the first time, potentially, if it's a new role for them. So that, I think, is just refreshing. Whereas, potentially, and this is not a sweeping statement, but previously leadership development may not have been seen as sophisticated, or it was sort of like just for the secret few, the anointed few in the organization. And it wasn't necessarily appreciated as much. That is a generalization, but that's my experience. So I think there's a lot of appreciation for any sort of leadership development that is offered for Gen Z's, millennials. Absolutely. So, and I think that's the best way to be receptive.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about coaching, Joe. You know, you're a trained psychologist. You were in the corporate world. What made you give it all up and become a coach?
It's a great question. I think the first point comes back to what I shared earlier. I think I was a little bit jaded. I think I was a little bit, I suffered a bit in corporate, and maybe I threw the baby out with the bathwater. But I wanted to have a sense of real authenticity in terms of what I was doing every day. And as much as the organizations I was working for were fantastic at what they did and gave amazing opportunities, there was something in me that didn't quite feel authentic. And so coaching was a consistent thing that I'd always enjoyed. Even when I was at university, I did work placement opportunities, and there was an opportunity to coach. I just loved it. And so I thought, well, if there's anything I'm going to focus in on, it'll be that which has been a love of mine forever. And even before I started working, I always loved speaking with people and understanding people and just talking. Everyone's got their story, and they know where they come from. So I think that's primarily it. There's nothing complicated. It's just, I like it.
Absolutely. And, you know, given your incredible background, and, you know, and you were telling me about all the work that you've done, and from a psychologist, author, a coach, corporate world. My question is, how has your background supported your own coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
So I think my background has, I grew up in Gallup as a professional. So from a coaching standpoint, I'm all about strengths-based coaching, positive psychology, and using really effective tools to enhance the coaching insights.
Right.
So that's where the Clifton Strengths comes into play. The Values in Action, Martin Seligman, Don Clifton, and their work, which I believe is really powerful. That has definitely shaped my work as a coach. Having said that, I think due to my upbringing and the differences that I got to experience across, going to so many different schools and having quite a varied upbringing, I think I've learned how to color outside the lines a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I don't stick too closely to the confines of what particular methods or frameworks say, here's how you do it. So when someone says this is the best way, I'm like, yeah, I'm not so certain. Or this is the only way, or you have to do it this way. And unfortunately, there are models that speak in that way. And also, many psychologists have a certain way of doing things. I like to be a lot more fluid than that, and enable my clients to discover for themselves what's going to work best for them. And appreciate that some clients want more structure and they want to be pushed more. But so that's...
I agree. And, most of us in our lives have been influenced by people. My question is, how have you been shaped by some of the people in your life? And how are those perspectives you've received from these people influencing you as a coach?
Yeah. So look, my parents have been a huge influence, and I'd say, both positive and challenging.
Correct.
And I think in that sense, as a coach, but also as a partner, as a father, as a brother to my sisters, definitely influences how I show up. And I think to be understanding of differences of opinion, difference of perspective, and just what has affected people in their lives. Like, it's very easy to quickly judge somebody But to truly understand their perspective, you need to understand what they've experienced and also what they've done with that experience in terms of the interpretation of it. I think that's key. And to just judge or write it off is, I think we're missing a huge opportunity there. So I think that, to me, I call it leading with the truth. And in order to understand the truth, you need to really listen.
Well said. My next question is on culture. And Joe, as a coach, we come across very, very different people from different countries, different organizations, which have all got different cultures. My question is, how does culture impact coaching?
Yeah. Well, I mean, culture impacts coaching, I think, mostly around receptivity. So if the culture, for example, does not facilitate feedback, or people are not used to receiving feedback, the coaching can be quite strained. Or if the culture is one of, it's a punitive culture. So if you do something wrong or you're not performing to the standard, let's say, then you need a coach. So coaching then adopts a stigma of, well, if you need a coach, that means you're not very good.
Correct.
So that shapes what they expect the conversation to be. Like, it becomes reprimand versus a development opportunity.
Right.
If, for example, the culture is one of very strong development and openness, then coaching is going to feel a lot different, because it will be received with open arms, and everyone will actually see it as a badge of honor to have a coach. Correct. Say, well, I've got a great coach, and I speak with them once a week or once a fortnight, and they'll actually say, have you spoken to your coach about that? That's something you should probably talk to your coach about, just to have that conversation offline. So I think it's so important in terms of shaping the effectiveness of coaching. If you don't have the sponsorship of leadership, and most often the most senior leaders, the CEO and the executives, then it's just not going to work.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So I have time for two more questions. My next question is again back to the millennials and the Gen Zs. We spoke about the millennials and Gen Zs a few minutes back and their leadership and how they're making a change. My question about millennials and Gen Z when it comes to coaching is, what are the areas, in your opinion, they need to be coached in?
Yeah. So I think, like I said before, they're so eager to learn, which is fantastic. And I think they also expect everyone else to be the same. They can't quite understand why others aren't as receptive or curious or willing to learn as them.
Correct.
So my advice there, and where I think they need to be coached, is that it's okay for other people not to be the same as them, and to want what they want, and to be as motivated as them around certain things. So that frustration, let's turn it into acceptance. So that's probably the first big one that I'd say I deal with. The second one is those differences come out to play when, and don't take offense to this, because you already said you're in the boomer category, but if you've got a senior leader who is a boomer, or a Gen Xer, let's say, they might have a very different view of the world, and they might be quite autocratic at times in terms of how they lead their people, how they expect you to lead. And so that can be a bit of conflict right there.
Yeah.
So I do spend a lot of time with this demographic, helping them approach their leaders without fear, but with a bit more courage. And so, again, lead with the truth. This is about having the conversation rather than letting it fester and letting it be unsaid. And I think that's where they become the leader that they're meant to be, when they actually step into those conversations and sort of stare down that fear. Because often what we fear is going to happen as a result is just made up, and it's not real. But yeah, I think that's a really big one.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, Joe, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to us. Based on your own amazing journey, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey and from our conversation?
Great. The first one, and I say this a lot, is we often go seeking answers, seeking support from coaches such as us, or books such as the ones we've written. And I think we all have the wisdom that we're looking for already. We already know. And the advice that I'd like to impart, or the wisdom that I'd like to throw in there is just stop lying to yourself. So that's the part where we create an energy loss when we continue to lie to ourselves about what it is that we really want, or who it is that we really want to be with, or the work that we really want to do, or the impact that we really want to create in the world. We lie to ourselves about what that's all about. In terms of other lessons from our conversation, I just say that whole coloring outside the lines, don't be afraid to just take your learning and integrate it. But don't necessarily treat it like gospel. This is your journey, this is your interpretation. Experiment, and that's okay. Be okay with experimentation.
Wonderful. And on that note, Joe, and your amazing lessons of, we all have the wisdom, but I think what you said, which is so powerful, stop lying to yourself. And the second one, which you said was again so very powerful, which is don't ever hesitate or worry to color outside the lines, because it is your journey. Thank you, Joe, for talking to me about leadership and your 6 amazing lessons, traits of leadership, which is listen, learn, be curious, liberate, link ideas, and love with courage. So you also spoke to me about your book, True Perspective, at great length, and I'm asking all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Joe Hart's book, True Perspective, on Amazon. Thank you also for speaking to me about so many different aspects of leadership and so many different aspects of coaching. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.